the second letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, speaks to us about our human condition and also those things in life that we would really like to have, but we just can't seem to get a hold of for ourselves. He starts out by saying in proclamation form, I, Paul, so that I don't get to celebrate in my elations. And he speaks about all of the revelations that he has. He's had these encounters with the risen Lord on the road to Damascus. He has had these great visions. He's had these great experiences that so many of the faithful have never had. And as you know from reading Paul and from hearing Paul, Paul is one who is not shy about boasting his own triumphs. He's really quite egotistical. You get down to the bottom line. He can be really quite a snob. If you think about Paul from a historical perspective, Paul was that apostle, somewhat self-appointed in the minds of some, but nevertheless an apostle to the Gentiles, to you and I, to the non-Jews. Paul is courageous and he's bold. He's bold in his proclamations. Paul is an individual who, according to history, was a tent maker. A very successful tent maker, I might add. So if he lived today, he would be probably the owner of a major construction firm, providing shelter for people who are on the go. Maybe the creator of RVs, who knows. Paul was also three other things. One, he was a Roman citizen by birth, which gave him certain rights and privileges that were not accorded to anyone else who was not a Roman citizen. He was allowed trial by an imperial court, for instance, which he eventually gets at the end of his life before he's executed. Paul is also a Jew, which endears him to the temple community, where most commerce was done. To be part of that temple precinct, to be part of the temple community, would be a great opportunity for what we would call today networking. And lastly, and the last point in his life to come about, he was a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ. So think about those three identifying characteristics for a moment. Whenever he got into trouble with the Romans, he could simply say, I'm one of you, I'm loyal to Caesar. Whenever he got into trouble with the Christians, his fellow Christians, because of his position and power with the state and privilege, he could say, I'm one of you. I preach Christ crucified. And whenever he got into trouble with the Jews, for supporting either the Christian community or being identified as a Roman, something that he couldn't help by birth, he would simply say, I am one of you. And he could embrace them through his work and his privilege within that temple community. Paul played these three identities very well and carefully throughout his life. Eventually, of course, it caught up with him, and he had to make a choice, and he chose to be identified as an apostle of Jesus Christ, which eventually cost him his life. As privileged as he was, he writes in this letter to the people of